In the cinematic sea of prequels, sequels, reboots, and reimaginings, Movie Retakes discusses Hollywood's new takes on beloved movie classics. I'm Big Sully.
And this is Matt Sully. With our own opinions and pitches, we address the question, should they make it?
Or should they leave it alone?
This week, we are going to be discussing the Bill and Ted trilogy.
No way! Yes way!
And our, I think, a shared love of Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. With pretty much everybody in the universe, since they did save the planet and all of humanity. I think we're all required to love it.
The documentary, you mean?
It's just them following around real live teenagers who happen to time travel and save all of humanity. I'm pretty sure, George Carlin is from the future and still living on in some capacity somewhere.
Had to be. I mean, who else could have written the TV rules for what cuss words not to say in the exact order that they put it into effect in the FAA? Yeah.
Yeah, that guy was he was really smart. Like he's probably one of the top 10 best comedians of all time. Like he had a way about him. You know, that's a big thing of being a comedian is you have to have where when you start a joke or your voice or your delivery and people without even seeing your face just know exactly who that is. They're like, oh, that's George Carlin. Like I know exactly how he delivers his stuff. And I would say that Dennis Leary probably had George Carlin as an idol. I don't know what the divide there is in time and age, but I would assume it was enough where he had probably seen him, at least even if he was getting started as a comedian and tried to model himself after that. Because there is some similarity there, except Dennis Leary's just much angrier, while George Carlin's kind of cool.
Yeah. He's able to go on just slightly longer rants at a little faster speed. But yeah, you're right. I think there's probably like a good 20-year age difference.
Yeah.
So I could see him growing up as a teen listening to Carlin albums.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the same comedian, but George Carlin smokes weed while Dennis Leary's on cocaine. And that's the difference.
Classic.
All right, so like I said, we're going to be talking about Bill and Ted, and that includes Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure from 1989, as well as Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey from 1991. And then we're going to talk about the new Bill and Ted Face the Music, as well as give our own pitches on whatever we're entitling our Bill and Ted third installment. So we'll start with, what do we have any stuff we want to mention? We do have a Twitter account going on, at Movie Retakes. Yeah.
So jump in there, jump in the conversation. Even if you aren't a Twitter user, I hear a lot of people going, I don't get it. Just follow us and then join in the conversation, answer questions, be part of the conversation, and see where it goes.
Yeah, because if you love movies, obviously you do if you're listening to us, I think you're going to get a lot out of the interaction on there, because we're going to be talking about not just our podcast, but probably a little bit of snippets here and there on when we actually go see these movies, because the stuff we're talking about hasn't come out yet, and we're excited to go see these as well. And they may be great, they may be horrible, but we want to go do some back and forth with you and find out what you thought, as well as give our own opinions.
Because if there's one thing everybody on the internet has, it's an opinion.
It's true. And they're all worthwhile, right?
Sure, every single one of them.
Yeah. So synopsis here for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. We're pulling this from IMDb. Two seemingly dumb teens set off on a quest to prepare the ultimate historical presentation with the help of a time machine. That's pretty solid.
Seemingly. Giving a little leeway to the boys there, are we?
If I'm a movie producer, probably. I don't know if I'd throw money at that, but it's a decent description. For Bogus Journey, a tyrant from the future creates evil android doubles of Bill and Ted and sends them back to eliminate the originals. Not as good a description, but it does include the storyline. Actually, it doesn't. It doesn't include a lot of stuff that happens. There's probably a better description we should have for that one.
I don't want to give away too much. Just a little taste, a little something.
Yeah. Avoiding the spoilers, as in describing anything about the movie at all. Bill and Ted's in it. Go see it. So when Excellent Adventure came out, that was 1989, and this was just a massive year at the movies. I mean, I actually remember this year going to see most, if not all, of these movies if I could, or I had to sneak in probably Lethal Weapon 2. But listen to this. The top grossing films of the year were Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which I still would like to say that's probably the best like trilogy, like third installment of a movie series ever. And in my opinion, I never saw the Glass Skull. Is that right?
Crystal Skull.
Crystal Skull. One of those skulls. Because I didn't want to, because when I saw Last Crusade, I'm like, yep, they nailed it. That's the ending. We don't need anything else. I'm done. And I have the same opinion actually about the new one. Until we discuss whether or not that's going to be one of our one of our podcasts, and then I'm forced to go see it, which I'm not looking forward to. But this will be the thing. We're going to have some movies that we possibly don't really enjoy. Also that year, Tim Burton's Batman, which was just huge. I mean, this was way before every other movie came out was a superhero movie. This and previous to this was the Batman with
Adam West.
Adam West, thank you. I mean, really, was that was, I think, until Tim Burton came and took Michael Keaton, and he became Batman. I can't think there was another one before that, right?
Yeah, I mean, they did the TV series in the 60s, and then there were some movies with Adam West and
yeah, that's what I'm talking.
the kid who played Robin.
I guess I'm wording that wrong. I'm saying like before or after Adam West, I think the next person playing Batman was Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
And
I think that was it.
Yeah, that's a big gap there. And this is like I say, this is not everybody was rushing to go see comic book movies, essentially superhero movies, and but this one just got everybody. Everybody loved it. Tim Burton did a great job with it. Anyway, this isn't the Tim Burton's Batman podcast. Back to the Future 2. Now I just want to talk about all these because they're all so good. Back to the Future 2. I mean, can you imagine? You go out and see Batman, and then you go see Back to the Future 2. Great. Ghostbusters 2, also just massive. Lethal Weapon 2. That's Dead Poet Society. Also a great movie, but maybe a little bit off in its own, apart from those sort of adventure, action, sci-fi blockbusters. But, Dead Poet Society is a spectacular film in its own right. And then also on top of that, there were some big family films. Look Who's Talking, which was a big hit and very funny. Bruce Willis did the voice of the baby in that one. I Shrunk the Kid, or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, sorry, which was also very good. I remember seeing that, and everybody loved that movie. Rick Moranis, I hear that he's supposed to come back for another Shrunk the Kids movie.
They're doing a Disney Plus series
on right?
Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Yeah.
It's a series, okay. But he's going to be in it, right?
Yeah, that's the conversation I've heard.
That's great. Yeah, and I don't know how much is rumored, but apparently he kind of disappeared as an actor for a long time, which is horrible because he really was a very entertaining actor. He apparently was taking care of his wife who got sick for quite a while. So basically just said, I'm done retiring from the spotlight, going to take care of my family for a while, which, that's very honorable and a wonderful thing to do. Not everybody would do that. But it'll be nice to see him again because he was a great face and a great actor, and those don't always come around as often as we'd like, and so it'd be good to have him back. Also, The Little Mermaid, which everybody's seen, whether you're a kid or not. Like you saw that 50, 60 times. And this was part of that time where Disney was ramping up again, where they had. Not maybe a bit of a lull. Disney's always been huge, but they weren't. They were relying on the old classics. Pulling things out of the vault every couple years just to basically get sales again on the old stuff. They were already relying on the Cinderellas and all these sorts of things. And then Little Mermaid came out. And what was it? Beauty and the Beast after that, and Aladdin, Lion King. Oh my God! And everyone was just huge. I mean, it was a big production. The animation was amazing. They were starting to working in CG and a lot of that stuff, and it looked really great. So anyway, these are massive, massive movies, and then we've got our little Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Like, that's a lot of competition, and I think it's amazing this time travel movie, especially against Back to the Future 2, got any attention at all. Unknown cast, but from time period, the month it was released, they weren't trying to compete with the summer blockbusters. This actually came out in February. Its biggest competitor. Oh. Yeah, that's nobody.
Just in time for Valentine's Day.
That's what I was thinking. I was looking at what else was coming out. I'm like, who is spending their Valentine's Day at the theater with any of these movies? What else came out in February was The Fly 2, which I don't remember that being all that great. I did enjoy The Fly. That was very good. Who's Harry Crumb, with John Candy, and The Burbs, and with Tom Hanks. And you would think that John Candy, come on, Tom Hanks, come on. Both of those should have just blown everybody else out of the water. But Who's Harry Crumb was not a great movie. It's just one of those that it's the embarrassing sort of low film that actors have from time to time. The Burbs, while it's a personal favorite of mine, sort of a semi-dark comedy, and I don't think American audiences were really all that comfortable with those types of films as they are now. And even now, they're not huge hits. You don't see a lot of those being made all the time. They come out like, every 5 years there's a dark comedy that actually does decent.
Well, people now are always complaining that Hollywood has no new ideas, and looking at that list of the movies that did come out in '89, almost all of those were sequels, except Batman, Dead Poets Society, and the family films that you mentioned. Bill and Ted filled that need that people may not have been that vocal about at the time, and when they wanted some original content, something totally different.
That's true.
So maybe that had something to do with it.
And I guess we're kind of... That's a good point, because we are again. I mean, we're doing a whole podcast series on these retakes, and here we were in that year. They're doing another Indiana Jones. They were bringing back Batman, Back to the Future, Lethal Weapon, Ghostbusters. They're all relying on stuff that already is established, because they're starting to realize that's where the money's going to get made. Like, we've already got you poured the time and the marketing into the first one. So yes, if it did anything at all, we got to make a second one. Bogus Journey. But so this is February of 1989. It's worth noting that both John Candy and Tom Hanks and Keanu had movies coming out later in the same year. So they had, Candy and Hanks had big summer releases with Uncle Buck and Turner and Hooch. So then it starts to make sense where these are the movies they sort of sweep under the rug. They're going to make a couple dollars, maybe just enough to get their budget back, maybe a little bit more, but that's not the ones they're worried about. They're going to push out Uncle Buck and Turner Hooch, and both did massively well, and they're still great movies. Keanu, you're asking, what did he come out in? Because who is Keanu Reeves? He was in Ron Howard's Parenthood, playing a similarly dopey supporting character named Todd Higgins. Sounds kind of similar to Ted.
Yeah.
Todd and Ted. Yeah. And I think that kind of established him as, well, maybe that's just who he is. Maybe he's not acting at all. And I think for the longest time, that's kind of how people saw Keanu, as a bit of a maybe not necessarily a stoner dope, but like a California guy, sort of. That's it.
Surfer bra.
Yeah, surfer bra. Yeah. No way. But that was a huge year. So for Excellent Adventure, like I said, Keanu Reeves, some people knew him from Babes in Toyland, but I'd never heard of him. Us dudes certainly didn't watch Babes in Toyland. if anything, Alex Winter was the bigger star. He had been in Lost Boys 2 years before. And Lost Boys is a great movie. When's the last time you watched that?
Yep.
That's
just last year, actually.
yeah. See, it's killer, man.
Yep.
That's a great movie.
Great film.
He's not huge in it. He probably has 10 lines or something, but at least he was in a kind of a big movie. But not much else after that. He kind of switched over to directing later on. I think he's always going to be known as Billis Preston Esquire, and so that's why he's very, very happy, I'm sure, to come back for this third installment.
I mean, before they finally greenlit this thing, I just would joke all the time. I'm like, poor Alex Winter's just waiting in the wing, going, Keanu, please, can we do another one? I need to pay the rent, man.
Yeah, man, give me something, please. Yeah, but he still looks good. I mean, they both look like they're gonna fit the part nicely. George Carlin's probably the big star in this, but I don't think he got top billing. He's not on the cover or anything. Well, he might be on some covers. They did have different variants and stuff depending on where things were released. One of the things I read that they actually was one of the endings was supposed to be where they were going to go to the prom was going to be the big ending, and there's actually some covers out there where they're all dressed up in these lame tuxedos. Thinking of like Dumb and Dumber, sort of the orange and blue with the ruffles and the canes and stuff. But
in the most famous version of the poster, the one I think of, it's got Bill and Ted like with their arms out to the side on top of the phone booth. George Carlin's head is on the moon in the background, like significantly smaller than the boys.
That's kind of sad, but yeah, I mean,
poor George. Screen
Screen time wise, I mean, he's not in there a lot. I'd say they're probably even, really.
Yeah.
It's probably like 10 minutes or something, if that. Yeah. So he was at the time, though. I think for our age bracket going to see this movie, I don't even know that we necessarily would have known who he was. Like one of them, maybe somewhere in the background, our parents were watching one of his stand-up acts or something. We kind of vaguely knew about him. The director of Excellent Adventure was Stephen Herrick. He had come off Critters from 1986. I've seen that a couple of times, and I remember it being sort of entertaining. Honestly, I'd have to go back and watch it again. But
Same.
It's one of those purposely campy sort of B horror films about little fuzzy. Well, I guess they're basically what Tribbles is from Star Trek there, but they
Tribbles with teeth.
yeah, but they eat everybody. After Bill and Ted, Stephen Herrick went on to do Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead in 1991 with Christina Applegate. He did The Mighty Ducks in 92 with Emilio Estevez. Then he did The Three Musketeers, Mr. Holland's Opus, 101 Dalmatians, Holy Man with Eddie Murphy, and Rockstar with Mark Wahlberg. So pretty good.
That's a good.
Yeah,
That's good.
Good resume there.
Yeah.
I don't think Holy Man or Rockstar were too well received. After that, he kind of trickled off to television. But he's not gone. He's consistently working, but just doesn't seem to be holding his own in the big blockbuster movie realm anymore. So when Bogus Journey comes out in 1991, there was no February release. This was promoted as the summer blockbuster, and this goes back to what we're talking about, where build off the fame. I mean, Excellent Adventure did get some notoriety after this, and so they're like, we got to keep going with these boys. They're going to bring in the cash. But it went up against Terminator 2. Can you believe that?
Yeah. There's one clear time travel winner in this scenario.
Yeah, and what does that say? Like every time it comes out, there's time travel all over the place. I think we were all falling in love with science fiction. I mean, Back to the Future, when it was coming out with Zemeckis there, prior to that, really got, for our age group, we were starting to, it was really feeding into our love of sci-fi and fantasy, or a building love for it. And Keanu also had a movie out the same month, Point Break.
So I got to pause there for a second. Keanu's having a resurgence now, but to have two movies of that size come out in the same month, so amazing. And he's going to have it again this year with a new Bill and Ted, with a new Matrix, and he's a featured character in that Cyberpunk 2077 game, and another John Wick movie coming out. They could all potentially end up coming out within a couple of months of one another.
Yeah, they will.
That's insane.
Yeah, especially that's gonna be massive. I mean, who would have thought that? Like, I never would have looked at that guy and been, well, and so I talk about this with my wife. I for the longest time, I did not respect Keanu as an actor. Like, to me, he was always Ted. He was always dopey and really didn't bring a whole lot of depth to any role. And then one day, we're sitting around talking, and I realized that I've seen like every one of his movies. And I really enjoy all the movies he's in. And I come to this realization, I'm like, wait a second, I might be his biggest fan. I love him. Like, really, like, I'll still say that he's not, I'm not going to throw him in every dramatic role. He's not going to fit in everything. But damn it, I really like the guy. And apparently everybody else does too.
And I don't know if it's him or his agent, but you look at the breadth of his work over his career, from playing the surfer bra to action movie guy to like freaking full-on kung fu master artist, comedian. I mean, he's done it all,
yeah.
And he's constantly trying new stuff. I mean, a lot of wins, but then you got some that weren't necessarily so well received, like Johnny Mnemonic, that was like Matrix Light at the time,
Yeah.
It's interesting, his career, to say the least.
Yeah, and I had, was it a video? I can't remember. I think there was a guy that basically did an analysis of Keanu Reeves as an actor, and every interview he ever gave, why he's so likable is because he never takes personal credit for anything. Every time anybody compliments him, he immediately shifts to complimenting someone else. He's like, well, I was only able to do that because I'm surrounded by amazing actors, or the director of this, blah, blah, blah. And he's
smart,
brilliant at that. He has a very easy way about him. So when he does speak, he never gets like overly excited about anything. Everything's very calm. He takes his time in answering and everything. And you just kind of, you get lulled into it. So, and apparently maybe that's what his acting style was all along. It was not that he was dumb. He's just so mellow and calm, like it's sort of a Zen-like approach to acting, where and apparently he was like a Shakespearean trained actor too. I remember somebody saying that, and he was in
what?
Yeah, he was in Kenneth Branagh's. He remember when he did a few of those different Shakespearean movies, which I enjoyed a lot of those. I think it was Much Ado About Nothing. I think he's in that. Yeah, of course we could look it up, but a bit part. I don't remember who he played in there, but I remember seeing him. So he's actually in a Shakespeare movie, one of Kenneth Branagh's. I think it was Kenneth Branagh's. Yeah, when not anybody else was doing Shakespeare stuff.
Yeah, that was definitely a niche thing for him at the time.
Yeah, but he did a great job. I mean, that's a whole separate discussion, but I enjoyed all those.
It was Much Ado About Nothing in 1993.
Nailed it. Great. So I do know a thing or two about movies.
There you go.
So in 91, it wasn't just Bogus Journey and T2. There was Kevin Costner's Robin Hood, Disney's Beauty and the Beast. We mentioned that earlier. Good for them. Like, just bam, bam, right? Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman in Hook, which people are kind of on the fence about that. But honestly, I really like that movie. I think it was that would have been one of our movie retakes right there. Like, it's a reimagining, right, of how that's handled. The Silence of the Lambs, which JFK, honestly, that was a pretty decent film, but I'm not going to watch it again. I'm not an Oliver Stone fan.
Yeah.
The Addams Family, which is a great movie, and that does have rewatchability. Cape Fear with De Niro, another one that would have been on movie retakes. That's a remake there, and very well done. That's Martin Scorsese did that. Hot Shots and City Slickers. So, I mean, diverse, but all made a decent coin, and then Bogus Journey's right there in the mix with them. In that Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves are back in their main roles. Carlin's in there. Pam Grier gets some screen time. The other folks who are also going to be in the third one are Hal Landon Jr. as Ted's father, Amy Stock Poynton as Missy, which was Bill's stepmom.
Stepmom's cute. Shut up, Ted. You know when she was a senior and we were freshmen? Shut up, Ted.
Missy? Mom.
Yeah. And then in the second one, she's married to Ted's dad instead of Bill's. So, and they have Bill played by Patrick McNamara, J. Patrick McNamara. He's all depressed, and they like go hardcore on his makeup, where he just looks like he's basically dying inside because his beloved Missy has moved on. That's a pretty good little gag there.
Missy's a whore.
What's that from, like Tommy Boy, where they're talking about that's when the whores come into town? Like, what? I visited a prostitute once during the war, and she won't let me leave it down.
They were talking about Missy the whole
Yeah,
time.
it was just Missy. She gets around. And I think at the end of Bogus Journey, there's something else. Missy goes and marries somebody else. It's one of those like newspaper clippings, and I can't remember who it is now. But...
It was Anomalous.
Oh, is that...
Yeah.
So he won something, I guess, unless there's a punishment in there. There must be if she keeps moving around. Maybe she breaks everybody.
Yeah, you got herpes.
Yeah, exactly. It's the plague of the future is really just Missy. Bogus Journey was directed by Peter Hewitt. So we move on from Stephen Herrick. It goes to Peter Hewitt. This was his first feature-length movie. He went on to direct family films such as Tom and Huck, The Borrowers, Garfield, voiced by Bill Murray, Zoom, and a TV movie sequel of Home Alone called Home Alone: The Holiday Heist.
Oof.
Yeah.
Poor Peter here.
Oof. Yeah, I was trying not to get too opinionated in a lot of this, but yeah, there's not much else I can mention in there where really redeeming films. Wasn't that even Bill Murray's like in Zombieland? He's like, did you have any regrets? Garfield, maybe.
So good. So true.
Yeah. And, you know, how these are received is reflected, if we're referencing Rotten Tomatoes here. Excellent Adventure got 79%. Bogus Journey's 54%. So not quite as loved. Even though I've seen all kinds of reviews where people were like, I liked it better than the first one. They think it's an amazing movie. Again, everybody has opinions. For money-wise, Excellent Adventure grossed $40.5 million against a $10 million budget. Nice job there. Bogus Journey grossed $38 million from a $20 million budget. So a slimmer margin there. Profit not quite as good. They still made some money, but honestly, I don't know where that $20 million went either. So we rewatched both of these movies, and now we can have some opinions. Tell me what you thought about both of them.
Well, I haven't watched Bogus Journey in a while, but I mean, if we're going to do this thing right, we got to sit down and watch them all. So I watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure a few days ago. Still holds up. I still love everything about it. I mean, right from the get-go, right when the thing starts, that music, if they start playing, you could hear that from a mile away through glass and go, I think someone's listening or watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, because it's so iconic. Just like Back to the Future, that music was so iconic.
Yeah.
Ghostbusters, they just knew how to do that in the 80s and the 90s with those big films. I don't know that it happens so much today. I couldn't tell you another example, but that got me right from the get-go. I'm like, I am in. I am ready for this adventure. All pun intended. I love that. I just made a couple of notes as I was watching, because I think at this point everybody's seen it. We don't really have to drive it home. If you haven't, what's wrong with you? Pause this thing, go watch it now.
Yeah.
Their research, they didn't have the internet, so their research was asking people that were walking into the Circle K, or their next plan was to go to the Thrifty Mart to get information from people. I thought that was fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Deacon, they had a younger brother, Deacon.
Yeah.
What the hell? He's in the movie for like 15 total seconds, and he's not mentioned in the sequel at all. What happened to Deacon? I want to know more about that.
And I really liked him as a character. Like when he's taking care of Napoleon and stuff, that dude's hilarious. Like he did a good job.
He was a good. Like there could be a spinoff there, but that's not what we're talking about today. I made a note. Missy was an interesting add-in, and I'll get to more when I get to my talk about Bogus Journey. And then I made a big note. I became a Doctor Who fan a few years ago, got into it, and I never really put two and two together until I was watching this again, and I'm like, holy crap, the phone booth is basically a TARDIS. Yeah. It just doesn't have the space part, only the time part, as far as we know. And so I looked it up, did a little cheating, I guess you might call, a little research, to find out if there was officially an influence. And I think you made this note for us to discuss in interesting facts later, but so I won't give it all away. But the directors or the filmmakers were going to use a different time machine, but decided and changed their mind because it was too much like another time travel film. Then the director, Stephen Herrick, suggested the phone booth, saying it would provide exciting visual nature of a roller coaster ride. Now, I don't think phone booth when I think that description at all. I think he was either a Doctor Who fan or someone in his family that lived over in the UK was a Doctor Who fan, because at that time it was not a big thing in the States at all.
Yeah, when did that series start? Wasn't it like back in the 60s or something?
Oh, it was 50 years old 5 years ago, so 55 years ago. Yeah. And it didn't really come to the States until they rebooted it with the Ninth Doctor about 8 or 9 years ago. So it was dead to most of the world at the time when this movie came out. So they probably thought, we can get away with this and no one in the States will ever even know.
Right, yeah.
Fast forward, we're putting it together. And then my final note is just Ziggy Pig.
Oh, behold! He ate the pig, thus proving that he's Ziggy Piggy, Ziggy Piggy, Ziggy Piggy.
I don't know where that whole idea of including Napoleon eating a giant ice cream and then like pushing the other kids away to lick the remnants off the table. But I thought that was just brilliant. And apparently that was a shout out to an actual ice cream shop called Pharrell's. Huh. I don't know if they still have that eat the whole ice cream and get it free. I think that would be pretty interesting. Or you didn't get it free. You got some sort of like the Ziggy Pig button. Yeah. I mean, not worth it for a 79-cent button, but okay.
No.
But all in all, still 5 stars across the board for me with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, even through poor special effects, even through a horrible view of what the future could be like. Like, they got nothing right. It's just horrible. I mean, we haven't gotten to those years yet, but we're going to be far different from that by the time we get there. Yeah. I love the movie. I'd happily watch it again and again.
Yeah. And Bogus Journey?
You want to go on to that one too?
Yeah.
For Bogus Journey, I made a comment about director Peter Hewitt. Next to his name, I simply put Garfield because of that list of crap that he made. That's all that I could see that was worth noting. He had a pretty impossible task to try to follow up the first. Why didn't they go back to Stephen Herrick? The guy was busy, clearly, but you work around his schedule and you get him back on the project. It would have made a lot of sense. Notes I made on this one. The sets were over the top crazy cool. When they went to hell, Satan and that giant like robot mechanical mouth that they got drawn into, those the rooms that were like his living room and stairs reconstructed in like almost like a Tim Burton-esque feel.
I did pick, I thought Tim Burton
wasn't
too.
That crazy?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know who set design was then. I could see it being a Tim Burton. No, he was too big at the time. Maybe a Rob Zombie who did set design for Pee-wee's Pee-wee's Playhouse.
Oh,
he was not a huge name at the time. He could have been the guy.
Yeah.
I wrote my next note. Missy was a whore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, how dare she?
Remember when I asked her to the prom?
Yeah. And then the weirdest thing happened. I rarely watch closing credits on a film. But I thought, I might as well. Right at the beginning of the closing credits, they go through and they show like the visuals with the big names like Keanu and stuff. But then when they get to the actual scroll, at the top in a weird font is written Taj Mahal.
Oh.
And then everyone else.
Yeah.
And so I had to look that up. It was not a shout out to the location.
No, it was a dude.
Supposedly. I don't know if this is verified, but there was a musician named Taj Mahal that was in the film.
Yeah.
And the theory is that he requested higher booking or higher name recognition than everyone else. And I feel like it was a dig from somebody that was actually doing the closing credits to go, all right, if this dickhead wants to be listed bigger, let's put his name in a different font and make it very confusing to everyone and just put Taj Mahal. I mean, where did that guy go on to do? I haven't heard his name since this movie.
No,
I didn't know who he was at the time.
No, I never knew who he was. Yeah.
I thought that was crazy. And then I have an interesting fact for the film, but I saw you have it in your notes for interesting facts when we get there. So I'm going to leave that off. But a shout out to one of my favorite bands of all time. All in all, Bogus Journey. I liked the concept a lot. The highlight was death. Death just owned that movie. I love what William Sadler did with the character. I love the comic element, or comedy element was everything that we loved from the first film in one character in the second film. And when I heard they're making a third one, the one thing I wanted to know is, does Death return? Mm-hmm. No spoilers. We'll talk about that when we get there.
Yeah.
But I'll watch this one every once in a while, but I don't need to see it again and again. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, I would actually say that I think this may only be the second time I've ever seen Bogus Journey because the first was enough. Excellent adventure. Obviously, I love it. I may have a whole bunch of notes on it, but I think there is some nostalgia in that. I mean, when it came out, I would say that it was made for us, like guys at our age, budding, if not existing teenagers. It was wild, funny, mixed with sci-fi and fantasy tones that kind of spoke to our imaginations, and it was PG. So, our parents could drop us off, despite George Carlin being in it, which may be part of the reason they didn't promote him as a huge part of it, because then parents would be confused and think it was an R movie, with sex and violence and everything. But it was just a couple of idiots go on a sci-fi adventure. What's wrong with that? And so that was a big part of where we, talking about what else was coming out at the time. They were all adult movies for adults, and this was, I think, kind of a movie for kids. Like I always talk about Star Wars was a movie for kids, and that's arguable, whatever. But I think kind of it was supposed to be simple. These guys were innocent, almost wholesome in a way. There was some mixture in there of, with Missy especially being, sexual or whatever, but they never really showed anything, and the violence was not really violent. It was all campy sort of stuff. And so I think that it was kind of a basic movie that everybody could enjoy and kids could watch it. And it was just a lot of fun. I think Stephen Herek was the right guy to make this movie. And I go on a little bit, like I'm looking at him as a director. I think he's a good director. Like, I'm watching this movie from a directing standpoint. I'm like, I like everything, all the choices he made. Yeah, there's some stretching with the graphics at the time, what can you do? Like, there's only so much that you can push. And I even like some of the stuff. It feeds into this whole, our vision of time and probably like the internet later on with like weird science where everything's just things that are passing by in some chaotic sort of, a manner. And then the future, like you said, yeah, there's only so many different futures that everybody sees. And one of them is always this, like, everybody's in silver jumpsuits or whatever. I don't know why silver is the color of the future, but it seems to be. I guess it's like some sort of nod on neutrality amongst everybody, where nobody has a color. We don't see color anymore. Everybody's equal. And but I think Stephen Herek did a great job, because I look at his other movies. So he takes Keanu in this movie. In Don't Tell Mom, Babysitter's Dead, Christina wasn't a big name. She was in the middle of Married with Children, which was in its own way turning television on its head with the Fox network. This was a brand new network, and nobody remembers that we were actually around to see this new network come on. And it was raunchy, lowbrow comedy that spoke to teens again. And so I don't think at the time teen voices were as respected as they are now, especially from like a money generating perspective. But we were starting to have an impact, at least at the box office, and the TV shows that were coming on, and that's where we could sway the influence, where this is who's watching, and we're actually getting some real numbers for this stuff. So I totally see how Excellent Adventure became a big thing and demanded a sequel, even if the sequel sucked. Anyway, I think Stephen Herrick's pretty good on this, and he made good movies with people that were either low tier actors or people that were low stages in their careers, and that's where I feel Peter Hewitt, who did Bogus Journey, fails miserably. He manages somehow to strip the quirky charm from Bill and Ted, where they're being dopey and saying these things, and I picture kind of like how like Joel and Ethan Coen, their scripts, especially like Raising Arizona, where it's these people say these sort of intelligent things, these phrasings and stuff that are so clever, and then when you have them with their terribly like southern accents or whatever saying these lines, it's even that much funnier. And I think that's a huge part of why Bill and Ted make this so good. And then for whatever reason, and it's got to be the director, everything goes up. Like, he's the last person to be blamed. Like, everything, it is your fault. It doesn't matter what else happens. The director is to blame if a movie's no good. And because you're supposed to oversee everything, and somehow he takes all that charm that was there in the first one, and he just squashes it. Like, it's just not there. And yeah, the story is ridiculous, but so was Excellent Adventure. The story is ridiculous for that. Like, yep. I never would have. Who would have guessed anybody throwing money at either of these movies? For me, yeah, I don't know if we're going to give ratings every time or whatever, but Excellent Adventure, I'll watch anytime. It's got high rewatchability. It's still very entertaining. Bogus Journey is just a sack of crap. It's just not good. There is William Sadler as Death is great. He did a great job. I like William Sadler a lot, and he did a lot with that character. I don't really care for the little spoken rap at the end or whatever. That was pretty lame. But he's great in it. And I really enjoyed the end, the rock anthem by Kiss. Like, God Make Rock and Roll for You. It's really catchy. I was even singing it today. And Kiss has that ability. They know how to make a rock anthem. But that's pretty much it. That's all the movie's got. And I won't say Keanu or Alex are, at fault here. Like, there's just not much to go with. But yeah, there's not really much happening in there, and I do not recommend watching that movie. Watch Excellent Adventure, but don't worry about Bogus Journey. That's gonna fall in line with those sequels that we just won't talk about much anymore.
Well, I got a question for you. Now, we didn't talk about this beforehand, but when it comes to watching sequels to a movie or movies where there are many, I'll bring up Fast and Furious because that's one of my favorite franchises. I feel like if you're going to appreciate the current one that's coming out at the theater, you had to have seen the others. Or else you're not getting the full picture. So for someone who may have existed and never seen either of these two films with a third part coming out, could they effectively watch Excellent Adventure, then go to the movies and be okay with seeing the third one? Or should they go see the second one merely from a information standpoint so that when they go to the film, they're armed with all the story so far?
No, because I think Bogus Journey has no value in the story either. Like, what really changes? It's like, so Missy goes and marries the other guy's dad, but after that, what? They basically end up. I guess really it comes down to the ending. Is that they go through some peril and they come back. They get together with their girls again. So I mean, they set that right. The villain has no real importance at all. He's a footnote. The big thing that actually happens, where this is the only important part. That might not even factor into this third one coming out, is that they finally get to the point where they become as famous as they're supposed to be. They finally reach that point where they become Wild Stallions. They finally get good at guitar. They become this band that does, we see in the newspaper clippings in the closing, where they go on this big tour, and even in before the closing, it shows all these different clips from people around the globe celebrating because they're all forced to watch their concert, and it unites them finally. So humanity is saved, and so that's the big thing. And I'm not even sure if they're in making this third one, if they're honoring that as well. But that's it.
Or will they retcon it like other directors are doing to other movies in a trilogy or a franchise?
Yeah, but I will say that even then, you don't need to see the second one because they reference them eventually becoming the saviors of humanity through their music in the first one. So you can go into this third one and it could have already happened, and you're like, oh, great, that happened, and we didn't need to see anything about it. We already knew it was going to happen. So it was an inevitability, so we didn't need this second one. It's just a misstep. So yeah, you can comfortably skip it, watch the first one, go see the third one. I'm guessing that you won't be lost at all.
I pretty much agree with you, and I wasn't trying to set you up to disagree with you, but I pretty much agree with you across the board, except for I think it is important to understand the relationship with death. That's a weird statement to say out loud. And then also, at the very end, and I forgot about this, and spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, when they come back after their, what they say it was like 18 months of intense guitar training with the babes, they have a Bjorn on their back, and each of them has a son, not a daughter.
Yeah.
So just remember that little tidbit for when we get into the conversation about what we know about the third film in the franchise later.
Right.
Because I think that's going to come into play, or will they somehow ignore that and just piss us all off because that was shown and then not talked about?
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But we don't have to wait and see what happens with our own pitches. We have each written our own ideas for what we think this third installment could actually be or should be, or what we at least would like to see.
Okay, I'm not going to tell you the title of this right off the bat. Mm-hmm. Well, actually, no, this time I will. I'm normally going to hold on to these. But since we already know a third one is coming and the title has been revealed, I didn't give a separate title. But also, before I give my pitch, I did not read the synopsis of the new one. The only thing I know is that the title is Bill and Ted Face the Music, and I know that their daughters come into play, and I know death returns. Sorry, spoiler alerts. I know all those things, but I didn't read the synopsis. I haven't been paying attention to any of the screenshots or any of the filming because I didn't want to know. I want to go into this one blind for the first trailer. So here is my pitch for Bill and Ted Face the Music. I would, if I had to pick a director, I'm going Robert Zemeckis on this.
I was thinking about him as well.
Someone who knows how to handle a time travel film and knows how to handle comedy. I think he'd do a wonderful job like he does with almost all of his films. And here is my pitch that I did write out so I could get this right, but I'm going to read it for you now. For Bill and Ted's third act, I would play off the quirkiness of the first film, but with a little death added. That's what the second film was intended to be, but it sadly didn't hit the mark the way the first film did. Fast forward to current day where Bill and Ted have begun to fulfill their destiny as the rock stars that bring the world peace and prosperity. Their children, one boy and one girl each, have been raised in fame and fortune and have no regard for what their famous fathers had to put in motion or what they are destined to achieve. Since the families live so close together, the children, now in their late 20s, have already been in plenty of trouble and are basically never going to leave home. Threats to send them off to military school, a shout out to the previous two films, had little to no effect, and neither Bill or Ted was really going to follow through on these empty threats. During this time, the time-traveling phone booth had been hidden on the estate of Bill's house without their knowledge at all. In fact, Rufus had planted it there and left a note that the boys should have understood, but just didn't get what it meant. So they've had it the whole time and they didn't even know. And the daughters find it while searching for something to steal and sell, something they had done quite a few times for their, let's just call them extracurricular activities. They're bad eggs all around. Without any knowledge of what the phone booth was capable of, because Bill and Ted didn't want them to even worry about this. They hadn't explained it to the kids. The girls accidentally time traveled to San Dimas, 1989. The phone booth is damaged upon their arrival, and they are stuck in 1989. Their first thought, being the bad eggs that they are, and they're fans of true crime podcasts, is to track down Ted Bundy, who they both thought was pretty hot.
Oh, God.
Ted Bundy is played by Andy Samberg.
Huh.
I've taken a turn
Yeah.
with this already.
Yeah, that's great.
Bill and Ted find out that their daughters are missing, and at just the right time, another upgraded version of the time-traveling phone booth appears to help the boys track down their daughters. It's got to have been sent by someone. We'll think Rufus, although he can't be in the film. Changes have already started to occur, a la Back to the Future with the photo. Based on the meddling of their daughters in 1989, and the boys have already pieced together where their daughters went, so they follow them back to 89 in hopes of undoing the mistakes of the girls. During their trip to 1989, they bump into their old friend Death, who was there to take Ted Bundy down to hell. They got there just a little too late. The girls had already visited, and using their future knowledge, had freed the psychopath killer. Since Bill and Ted hadn't technically met Death yet, they have to spend a good 5 to 10 minutes of the film convincing him that they actually eventually get to know each other really well and prove that he can trust and help them. So, because 1991 is when they met Death. 89, they hadn't yet. So we got to go through that whole thing again. There's a good shtick there, I think, where they've got to, convince him. Eventually, Bill and Ted, along with Death, track down the girls and Ted Bundy, but not before making some pit stops along the way, running into other famous folk, including a young Anthony Kiedis and Flea, who were in dire need of some words of encouragement in 1989. Death takes off with Ted Bundy, and Bill and Ted take the girls back to present day. I got a post-credit scene, because that's just tied up a little too neatly for a trilogy in this day and age. Post-credit scene reveals that Ted Bundy actually beat Death in a game of Operation and 2 other games, because he has to do best 3 out of 5, and returned to Earth where he went back to his old ways. The girls, having learned from their mistakes and now fully believing that time travel is 100% real, load up the phone booth again to chase down Ted Bundy. This sets up the possibility of another film, or, and I'm doing a double pitch here, we know we're getting a trilogy, we're getting a third film, but I think this is prime for a series where the girls are tracking down Ted Bundy using their knowledge from all the serial killer and true crime podcasts that they listen to apply what they learn and track down the serial killer. You don't need to have Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves in the series.
Yeah.
They could pop in every once in a while for fun, but this just totally is the setup for a series based on the trilogy.
You could very well be right on that too. Like this is at the point where it is, passing the baton, and it could be that these their daughters end up going with it, and could be a series. It could be just basically starting the franchise all over again with a whole new excellent adventure. It could go anywhere from there. Yeah, there's some cool stuff in there. I like Andy Samberg being in there. I like him a lot. He's a lot of fun. So him as a serial killer would be funny. That's cool. I think we'll talk probably more about this sort of general sort of trouble that time travel movies get you in. They're a lot of fun, but at the same time, it's what are the rules? You try and establish this, and I was trying to figure that out while I'm watching the first two, because there is points where Rufus is like, well, you have to wait, until it's time. And so they were trying to match it up to where the years, at least, and I think in the months and stuff, basically here's the future. It's 600 years or something in the future, but it's happening at the same time as this moment's in the past. So you have to only do these things at these certain moments. But then the rest of the movie has weird things where they can travel in any time the rest of the time. So I don't really get it. Like I didn't understand exactly what the rules were. I kind of just ignored everything as I was writing my own here, because I don't know. I don't know, because we learned that in Back to the Future, right? Like you change the past and then it's going to ripple effect, and I like that. I think that's smart, and I'm always thinking about that. I think most people think about that with time travel movies, but this didn't seem to. The Bill and Ted series didn't seem to be as concerned about how they're going to mess up the future by changing things in the past. But then they know that the whole point was to send people back to change the past to fix the future. So what is it? And it's fine because it is goofy, right? So I think the rules being more guidelines and not rules is kind of what they're after.
I had a similar debate with myself while I was watching those first two. I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't remember them having to specifically go at a certain time. So wait a minute, are there rules? Was there a section where they explained the rules and then they cut that out when it went to the theater? Can I get the director's cut? Because I want to know what those rules were.
Yeah. Yeah, because it does change things, because then you're adding drama too. Like you say, well, you have to do it by this time, and then so then there's, because that's the thing. As soon as you say it's a time travel movie, it doesn't matter what you do. Like, so what if I screw it up? I'll go back and do it 10,000 more times. Who cares? So yeah, that takes the pressure off. But if you add those rules where you have to do it right this time because there's a small window, then that amps up the drama. But it didn't really necessarily seem to fit that.
They even play with that a little bit. They're like, dude, after we win, let's just go back and we'll put the cage and the gun.
Yeah.
And yeah. It's like, no, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
You got to do one before the other, bro.
All right, so here's mine. I think we're both, and it seems to be a pattern with us here. Maybe it's just the movies we've been covering, but this is a true sequel. It's the same time frame and everything. That yours goes off into a series, but you start with the movie itself. So same sort of thing here. It's been 30 years since Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan went on a most excellent adventure and a very bogus journey, where they eventually prevail over evil and, actually having learned to play guitar, effectively set right the circuits of time and save humanity. Now, after touring the galaxy 3 times over to generations of fans across hundreds of years in the future, they've come back to Earth to realize their children are grown and they are just 2 aging rock stars who have disappeared within the shadows of their own fame. I like this concept where now a rock tour can actually go across time, where they can, and they kind of mentioned too going to like the Mars station in the second one. Mm-hmm. After the final concert of the tour, ending in their hometown of San Dimas, California, Bill and Ted take a long-needed break at their favorite bar. We see the pair at the Old West Saloon, where they blend in with the crowd. There's no fans, no autographs, no screaming, just bar fights and cards and whiskey, and they couldn't be happier. It's here where, after fulfilling all their lifelong dreams, Bill and Ted decide to retire Wild Stallions. Upon their return to the present, however, they discover their sons have disappeared. So we have some similarities there. Bill and Ted's time-traveling phone booth was long ago swapped out for a custom ship capable of sending the guys to any place at any time instantly. The trouble is, Bill and Ted have no clue where or when to look for their kids. As Bill and Ted investigate their sons' disappearances, speaking with their ex-wives, the princesses, and the boys' friends, we discover just how distant Bill and Ted have become from their family and how little they know about their children. Bill and Ted Jr. turn out to be just as dopey as their fathers were at their age, but also the pair hate their dads. Worst of all, they hate Wild Stallions. No way. When Bill and Ted pinpoint the moment their sons were kidnapped, they thwart their abductors, who turn out to be actual aliens. And no, it's not going to be Station. If you remember, Station from the Bogus Journey is this weird...
Station!
Yeah, that was terrible. The aliens inform Bill and Ted that it's Bill and Ted Jr. who saved their species from annihilation. Bill and Ted Sr. tell the aliens they've got the wrong Bill and Ted, but the aliens scoff at the old-timers, vowing to take the boys back to their planet. When the boys disappear again, Bill and Ted restart their investigation, only to discover that their sons were kidnapped years before. Dads Bill and Ted go back in time and perform their old time travel trickery to save their boys, only to have them kidnapped at younger and younger ages. While rescuing their sons over and over, Bill and Ted visit several moments in their kids' lives, so many important moments they missed while away on tour for so long. At one point in their time-shifting rescues, they have a baby, kid, teen, and adult versions of their kids in the ship all at once, and it's total chaos. Finally, the aliens kidnap both sons and fathers and take them to the alien homeworld. We find out that this alien race has been at odds with a neighboring species for years, and they think that music is what will bring them together, just like what happened on Earth with Wild Stallions. Bill S. Preston Esquire and Ted Theodore Logan let the aliens know they'll put on a final show to help save their planet and their sons. They travel back in time and bring musicians from the past, including their old friends Beethoven and Eddie Van Halen, and put on an incredible concert. It's amazing, the greatest show they've ever had, but the concert's a failure. The aliens are still divided, and it's Bill and Ted Jr. who suggests that it's not just listening to music that brings people together, but creating it. Bill and Ted tried jamming with the aliens, but the strange instruments and sounds of the warring species sound awful, and even are too harsh to blend in the background of the awesome dual guitars of Wild Stallions. They're at a loss as to how to fix it until Bill and Ted Jr. begin to play the alien instruments and their fathers discover the boys are natural musicians, just with a different sound. It's then that Bill and Ted understand what the aliens really need. Instead of a collaborative concert performed alongside humans, they help the aliens bring their own disparate sounds together. The two alien species put on their own concert, uniting their separate people, essentially becoming the Wild Stallions' saviors of their own part of the universe. Bill and Ted bond with their sons, and before returning to Earth, apologize for being such absent fathers. They promise to do better, not just in the future, but the past. We end the movie with Bill and Ted going back to those same moments in their sons' lives, teaching them music, helping them practice for school performances, and finally, as fans, attending a concert of their son's now famous band, Wild and Free. And that's the name of the movie, Bill and Ted, Wild and Free. And so it's both sets of Bill and Ted's, his father and sons, and all that sort of dramatic, touching stuff. I have some notes just where in the middle with all the campy sort of comedy rescue stuff, there's probably some gaps in story there. I was thinking maybe there'd be like an alien love interest for the two sons, and they could fight over her until they discover the aliens can make like duplicates of themselves, and they both end up with her. There was also my wife suggested that maybe one is one of the sons, or one is a son and one is a daughter. So like Bill has a daughter and Ted has a son, and there could be a sort of they've spent so much time together they're not related, but maybe they'll end up together. So but they don't, but there's that sort of thing. So it could be kind of fun with that. And I think what I read from the trivia for Bogus Journey, the babies, now granted they were actors as babies, but they were both girls. And so the whole play off of the thing, I think, which they do in the third one is, Billy is like a girl's name or whatever, and Theodora or something, that. So it doesn't really matter too much as far as if they're boys or girls. I think it can work either way. For me, I just think that there's always this sort of thing with fathers and sons and passing on the legacy and them being actual named junior, but there's a separation of, they don't truly, they were basically just looking at their sons in a certain way, but never really actually being their fathers, so that's the thing that actually needs to change in the end, where they realize that they're their own people and their own musicians and being fans of theirs, essentially.
I like it. I like the way you went more universal. It became way bigger than just Earth. I think that's fun. That's a nice element because we did get introduced to Mars in part 2 and the fact that there were beings there. So why limit it to just the 2 planets?
Yeah, because what I wanted to do, I was trying to drill it down into the basics. Is like the first one covered history. The second one covered death, really, and then sort of dipped into, intergalactic travels, and then I thought the third one, why not aliens, so we'll just throw aliens in there. So I thought it would kind of round out all the crazy concepts in there real quick. So I would obviously bring Alex and Keanu in. For the sons, I was thinking of Daniel Radcliffe as Keanu's son. I figured with a healthy trim of the eyebrows, there are some vague similarities there, and I'd like to see him play a dope, I think it'd be a lot of fun to see him play just a real goof.
I almost wrote his name down as Ted Bundy.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
That's funny.
Yeah, I've seen him in some other stuff, and I really like him. I think he's actually pretty good. Now, bear with me on this one, but for Alex's son, I want to try Jack Gleason, who played Joffrey Baratheon from Game of Thrones. He shares some visual similarities, but this kid needs an acting facelift because everyone hates him. Like, they hate him, and I'm sure he gets like punched in the face when he walks down the street. And I think there might be something more to him, and this is his chance to be seen as something other than Joffrey. And I think playing a complete idiot would kind of reset audience perceptions of him. We also, in discussing with Vanessa earlier, Joe Keery, which I don't know too much of him, but I do like him and what I've seen him in. And then if we're going to do a girl as one of them, maybe Chloe Grace Moretz as Bill's daughter, because I could totally see her just being a total idiot and having some fun with that. For director, I did consider Robert Zemeckis, but I actually thought that in a way that's a hindrance of him already handling time travel, where we'd all be mixed up in the same expectations. We'd see Back to the Future again, even if he didn't intend it. So I'm actually going with Ben Stiller. I think he's if you remember, I mean, he's actually got a fairly diverse background with directing, going all the way back to Cable Guy, and so he's able to handle like some interesting cinematic looks, comedy and drama. Talking about dark comedies, I mean, Cable Guy was not well received, but if you watch it again, it's very funny and it's very good, and everybody in it's really good. But I think he could handle all of the goofy as well as like the drama in there. Okay.
Yeah, I can see that too. He's a good director. I think he's not often looked at, but as a director, but he definitely has been.
Yeah. No, I've always enjoyed him as a director. I think he's good. And he usually plays in most of the movies he's in. He directs, and that to me seems impossible. Like, I don't know how you do that, but maybe it's easier for them because they already know what they want, but I don't know. That seems like it's adding so much more to the trouble of being a director. There's already so much to manage. Okay, so we did our pitches. Now we're going to actually talk about the new movie, the one that's actually been made. This is Bill and Ted Face the Music, which I really like that title. I think it's a good title. It's set to release on August 21st, so not too far from now, 2020. And here is, and what you mentioned earlier, I think is the only information out there. There is not much.
Really?
I don't think there's a trailer for it, and there is very little information. And they've done interviews on it and stuff, and they just have not said too much about what it's really about. So the only description right now is that once told they'd save the universe during a time-traveling adventure, two would-be rockers from San Dimas, California find themselves as middle-aged dads still trying to crank out a hit song and fulfill their destiny. And that's why I mentioned earlier, like, I don't know that they're even honoring the second one, because it could be argued that even though they were a huge hit, they still didn't make the song that saved humanity, but it's pretty strongly implied by that ending in Bogus Journey that that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, between their 18 months of intense guitar training and then all those clips and magazine covers and stuff they showed during the closing credits.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is some similarities. I mean, obviously we know they're dads. So, and we talked about they're going to be daughters. We know that much, not sons. Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, who did write the first two, also wrote this script, which I think is important. I like that for continuity. And you never know whether, I'm sure when they wrote the first one, they didn't have this idea that this is going to be a trilogy. But when somebody writes something, they have all these concepts that come into their minds, the bigger picture sort of stuff that don't make it into the script. And so I think, having these guys as the writers at Ken is going to give them an opportunity to bring in those bigger picture sort of ideas. So I think that's a plus. Keanu, Alex, William Sadler, like I said, are all going to be back. So there you go. You got Death. He's going to be back again, which, I don't know. If it's a minor sort of thing, but if he's there the whole time, I think that joke's going to get old. I think...
I don't think he will be.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's minor. Amy Stock, Hal Landon are both back, so that's Missy and Ted's dad in their roles. There's some new folks, Kristen Shaw, Samara Weaving as Bill's daughter, Thea, and Bridget Lundy Payne as Ted's daughter, Billy. Now, Samara Weaving I did see in 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and I didn't watch the whole movie, The Babysitter, but I did see some of it. And from what I saw, I think that's probably McGee's best movie, if not his only good one.
Was that the horror one on Netflix?
Yeah, I thought
That was a good movie.
Yeah, from what I saw, I was like, this is kind of fun. It's exactly what it should be. It'd be stupid,
Yeah.
sort of fun. But yeah, I think she's the babysitter. She's the main one in that's the babysitter in there.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea who Bridget Payne is. From what I looked up on IMDb, she is an actress, but she's also like a fashion model or something. But probably we're entering into an age bracket here where I'm just gonna not know who anyone is, but they could be the most famous person in the world right now. And I'm just not going to know. I do know Kristen Shaw.
Yeah.
Everybody knows her as Louise Belcher from Bob's Burgers, which I didn't even realize until I was looking it up. They got a movie coming out. A Bob's Burgers movie is going to be coming out later on. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to that because I love that show. It's hilarious. She's just insane, but she's mostly does voiceovers, but if you remember back on Fly of the Conchords, she was their one fan. She was and she was fantastic. Like she was just stalking them the entire time, and she was hilarious. That was where I first
She was
saw her.
on Fox Last Man on Earth too.
You're right. Yeah, and I like
Yep.
that show.
She was good in that.
Yeah, she was good in that. That was a funny show. There's some other good folks in here. Holland Taylor, Jillian Bell, Beck Bennett, Anthony Carrigan, all very funny people. They've all been kind of, Beck Bennett's on SNL, Anthony Carrigan's on Barry, Jillian Bell's done quite a few different TV things. She does a lot of voiceover stuff as well. Holland Taylor's been around
Workaholics.
for a while in all kinds of mostly supporting roles, but all very funny people. Dean Parasot is directing this one. Now, he's done a lot of television, mostly comedies, going all the way back to Reading Rainbow from 1988.
Wow.
Yeah, been around a while. He also did Get a Life, if you remember that one, Northern Exposure. These are all the television shows from the time period. For movies, he's done Home Fries in 1998 with Drew Barrymore and Luke Wilson. And you'll like this. It was written by Breaking Bad's Vince Gilligan. Yeah, so
Nice note.
I never saw that, but now I'm intrigued. Fun with Dick and Jane in 2005 with Jim Carrey, Taya Leone, and Alec Baldwin. I didn't see that one either. For whatever reason, I skipped it, but now I'm kind of interested.
It's all right.
Ratings are pretty decent. He also directed Red 2 in 2013 with Bruce Willis, Helen Mirren, and John Malkovich, which was pretty fun. It was a good little action movie. And Galaxy Quest in 1999 with Tim Allen, Sigourney Weaver, and Alec Rickman. And I put that one last because it's an awesome movie. I'm a big fan of that movie.
If you're looking at resumes on something that aligns, Galaxy Quest is perfect. Like, I trust the guy who directed Galaxy Quest
Me
to
too.
do a Bill and Ted movie.
Me too, because I think there's some hard to explain, but I think there's some overlap in kind of this campy drama parody sort of thing that is exactly what that movie's about and exactly what the Excellent Adventure is, and I think that's what Bill and Ted sort of encompass. And for that alone, I think well, now we can kind of talk about our expectations. What do we think about our ideas? What do we think about the ideas for this movie? I know there's not a lot of detail, but based on that, I'm intrigued.
I'm definitely intrigued. I'll definitely see it, most likely opening weekend, just because of what Bill and Ted has meant in my life. I mean, that is just one of those cornerstones of film that will always be there for me. I don't like the idea that they would retcon away what happened in 2. Even if it wasn't a great film, I think you got to honor what got you there. And it seems a shame, unless they can explain it away with more time travel, which I hope they don't. I want a good explanation as to why we're looking at 2 daughters, and if the sons aren't mentioned at all, I'm going to be really pissed. I'll probably still enjoy the film. But I don't know, more than anything, and this is always my argument, so as long as we do this podcast, people will hear it over and over again. I just want more of the story. I want to see more of those characters that I love. I want to see more of the universe that they're a part of. Even if it's crappy, just to be able to see a little more is almost always satisfying. Exception Anchorman 2. That's something I'll reference a bunch as well. But it's very rare that I leave completely disappointed. I have a rule that if I paid for the ticket or rented it or whatever, if there were at least one aha moment in the film, whether that's special effects, acting, storytelling, whatever, if I get at least that one moment, then I'm not upset that I took the time to watch the film. And I hope they deliver on that.
I think that there are a couple of things, like basically lessons to be learned from Bogus Journey. And I'm hoping they did learn a few things. One is that I don't want to see a rehash of the same jokes. I don't want them to mention military school again. I don't want them to mention Missy again, actually. I think we can comfortably move on. If those are like one-hit things somewhere in the background, like you're just passing over it, fine, but I just don't want it. And honestly, coming back to them as these characters is incredibly dangerous, because I do think there was a charm that existed in the time frame of Excellent Adventure that I don't know that these guys are going to get again. It's incredibly risky. And so, honestly, if they're going to do this, well, they already did, but in doing it, I would make Bill and Ted minor characters in a way, where we're talking about passing the baton, where they're in it for the intro, and then we are introduced to their daughters, and then they are basically the bulk of the movie. So we get new characters, because I don't want to see Death again, actually. Like, I loved William Sadler, but I just don't see how he's going to fit in. I don't want it to be a revisiting of all the things that we remember from the first one. I want something new, and I wouldn't mind if we just saw all the daughters. And I don't care if it's boys versus girls, whatever. That's fine with me. I don't want it to be the same thing. I don't want it to be the same story. I don't want the same jokes. I want something new. And another thing that needs to come out of this, where, like I said, I like the ending Kiss song, but I think what they hoped for and never got to really was that the whole point of this is that, and it's a joke in the first one, but the whole point of this is that they eventually become amazing musicians. So I want amazing music in this movie. And I know that's a hard demand. You write a movie around that sort of stuff, and you're like, the script writer says, awesome song here, or whatever. And you hope that it is an awesome song, and it probably won't be. But if they can, I would like this to be a movie that everybody leaves singing like 3 of the songs, where they're like, man, that was a great song when they did that. And you have to end with a humanity-saving song. Like, it's gotta be like the best song that's ever been written for a movie.
I don't think you can introduce a song that's supposed to be that song. I think you always have to avoid actually playing that song.
Well, yeah, because it's impossible. But that's what I want.
It is.
That's what I want. I want a great song.
You made some good points there. One of the only things that scares me is the idea that you title a film Bill and Ted Face the Music, but Bill and Ted only play a small part in the film. As a moviegoer, I will get it, but I think the majority of the population would be pissed. They'd be like, I paid for a Bill and Ted movie, and instead you gave me Billy and whatever her name was.
Yeah.
Thea. I think they've got to be in a majority of the film, at least 51%.
Well, so for me, I think it's going to be one of those things where it's, here's what we wrote, and in theory, this should be fine. But when you get on set, after you filmed a couple scenes, you have to gauge the chemistry. And if Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves don't have it anymore, because we see Keanu in a whole different light now. Alex will always see the same. He will always be Bill.
Yep.
But Keanu is a different man now. Like, we don't see him as that same character. And I will even say that it will be hard for him to get back into that character and express it properly where we believe it. So I think there's a few ways to handle that. One is where immediately we just see them as more mature men, and they are not actually like that anymore. Maybe every once in a while they get drunk and they just do stupid shit. But for the most part, they've grown up. And Yeah, if they've grown up and you handle that properly, where we're not expecting them to be total, stoner dopes or whatever they're supposed to be, the California surfer guys, then yeah, that'll work for me. But if that's what they're trying to write in, if that's what they're trying to deliver, and they don't deliver, boy, it's going to be bad.
No, it's a valid point. They can't be the same characters. They had to have evolved or changed in some way.
All right.
Hopefully a big way.
Yeah, I agree. And
you're right about the music too. That's something I was thinking about. Like I mentioned in the first one how I love the opening song that was really more the soundtrack, not music, not a artist's music like we'd listen to on the radio. And in the second one, there were a couple times like Primus played, and like you said with Kiss, and I think there was a Faith No More song, because they even referenced Faith No More. But I was like, oh, you guys almost got it. Like, we needed 4 more songs like that throughout the film, and it would have been epic.
Yeah, I remember when it started, and because I honestly, like I said, this was probably the second time I'd seen it, I didn't remember a lot about the movie. And when the Faith No More guy came on, I was like, oh, is this going to be kind of one of those movies where they've got musicians sprinkled in and we get a little taste of music and stuff? Because that wouldn't be too bad. And I'm wondering if they thought they might go that direction, but then they just didn't, because it's weird to suggest that here we have these different entertainers, but then they don't actually, Primus played a song.
I think I don't know. I think that's exactly what happened. I bet there were a bunch of scheduling conflicts and agents and all that got in the way of having really cool, like, Guns N' Roses and Metallica and all these different bands who were hot at the time in there.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that in the trivia, but here's some of the things that we did find. The characters of Bill and Ted were created and played by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon in Improv Theater. Originally, it was Bill, Ted, and Bob, although the third character was eventually dropped. Matheson and Solomon have described Bill and Ted as an idealized version of their friendship. Bill and Ted equals Chris and Ed. In the original improvised pieces, Ted was described as having a stoner, pseudo-intellectual older brother. This was changed for the film, although Bill's stepmother, Missy, did make the transition from theater into the film.
Huh.
Yeah, pretty neat.
Interesting. In earlier drafts of the script, Rufus was actually 28 years old, and historical figures Bill and Ted plucked from history included Charlemagne, whom they referred to as Charlie Manger, Babe Ruth, and a non-famous medieval person called John the Serf. John is actually listed in the credits? What? That's crazy. It's like the octopus in Goonies.
That's funny, yeah. Here's what you mentioned or alluded to earlier. Originally, the time machine was to be a 1969 Chevrolet van, but the idea was nixed as being too close in concept to the DeLorean used in Back to the Future trilogy. Yeah, and considering they came out and the second one came out in the competing year, there that would have been people would have probably had some words about that.
Yeah, no doubt. According to Alex Winter, filming in the phone booth was so unpleasant that he and Keanu Reeves nicknamed it the Death Box.
Yeah, I can't imagine. They do those jokes where you cram a bunch of people in there and then they actually seem to in this. I don't know, that had to be awful. The phone booth time machine was given away as a contest prize by Nintendo Power Magazine, which was promoting the video game Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Oh my God!
Who has that? That's what we need to have done, is track down who got that. Because
that would be awesome.
Some kid, would have got it.
They sold it.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's in a museum somewhere. Some rich person has it. Interesting side note before we go to the next one. I went to a hidden bar in Los Angeles last year or year before. It was at this really swanky hotel. In order to get into it, you had to go into the alley behind it, behind the dumpster. And there was actually a bouncer there, and they would let you in. And then you went down this long hallway, and there was a vending machine, like an ancient vending machine. They would open that, and that got you into the bar. It was so badass. But in the bar, there was another level. There was a phone booth in the back corner and very dim lighting. But if you looked on top, you could see the antenna from Bill and Ted that made it into the time-traveling phone booth. And if you got in and shut the door, another door opened behind you that led to a secret karaoke room.
No, that's too
It was
cool.
badass, man. All throughout the place, they had VHS, the clamshell cases had the menus inside them. There were entire walls of cassettes that had been put up like tiles and then laminated over. I mean, the place was super cool. But that
cool.
phone booth in the corner, I wonder how many people just thought it was a phone booth and
Yeah.
never looked up on top. I instantly went, I was like, oh, shit, it's the
Yeah.
phone booth for Bill and Ted.
Oh
I
man.
wonder if it's the one that kid won.
Yeah, it could be. That calls for some air guitar.
Excellent!
All right, moving on with fun trivia. For years, Keanu Reeves lamented that his epitaph would be, "Here lives Keanu Reeves. He played Ted."
Yeah. That's what I was talking about. Like that's how I always saw him for years, right? So it was hard to
Yep.
to see him transfer. Now I think the majority of people see him as John Wick or Neo, but they don't even think about him as Ted anymore.
Johnny Utah.
So I guess he, yeah. So he moved on pretty well. Joss Ackland, who played the villainous former gym teacher Chuck DeNomalos in Bogus Journey, wasn't a fan of the film. He later admitted only taking on the role because of a bet with a family member.
That's a weird thing to do for a bet, but hey, he got paid.
Yeah, I'm assuming he
in
lost
a-
the bet.
Yeah, you'd think, right? In an early draft of Bogus Journey script, Rufus was the villain. What? How would he have pivoted?
I don't know. I'd like to read that though. That'd be interesting.
Ooh, you know it's out there somewhere.
Yeah. Bogus Journey was originally named Bill and Ted Go to Hell, but after fearing the word hell may offend American audiences, the title was changed to something less sacrilegious.
I can see that. Despite being the biggest band in glam rock history, face painting obsessives Kiss only ever scored 2 UK top 10 hits. The first, Crazy Crazy Nights, reached number 4 in 1987, while taken from the Bogus Journey soundtrack. Their second, God Gave Rock and Roll to You, peaked at the same position 4 years later. That's nuts.
So I don't. The only thing I don't know is if they wrote that for the film or it just happened to come out and they did it for the film or not. I don't know.
That's a good question, but this was at a time, I think we talked about this when we were doing another one of these, where they would always have a song customized for the movie.
Right.
It just was a standard at the time, so maybe.
Yeah, could be. I mean, they didn't. It's not one of those really lame songs where it like worked the word bogus
The
or
title.
into the title.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it is a good song. I actually really enjoyed it. Originally, the plot was to have Bill and Ted visit and accidentally cause all of history's greatest tragedies. This is Excellent Adventure, including the sinking of the Titanic and the crash of the Hindenburg. I kind of like that.
I do too. I wouldn't mind seeing that version of it someday.
But
Maybe if they rebooted it, that could be a concept.
the problem is, though, like, it's funny to a point, but then you realize how many hundreds of people died at their hands, and it's not so funny anymore. So it needs to be
True.
tragedies that somehow nobody died. I don't know if there's anything like that, but yeah.
Interesting. Principal photography was completed in 1987 for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, but the film's original financiers, De Laurentiis Entertainment Group, went bankrupt. The film was in danger of being dumped onto cable television until Nelson Entertainment bought the rights in 1988 and released it in 1989. God, what would have happened if that had gone straight to cable? It would have never been a thing.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard that before, different movies and stuff where the movie gets made and then, because there's a whole process that people don't really understand, and this is part of what happens at like the Cannes film festivals and stuff, where they make a movie and then they go and shop it around essentially. So a bigger production company then basically buys it so that they can promote it and make it a huge success. So the movie's already done, but they may not have the budget for marketing and all that sort of stuff. So they could release it, but it wouldn't be a wide release, big blockbuster thing. So then they have to go on from there. And then other companies just, the whole company's struggling. And then it's, sort of in the hands of fate after that.
That's what happened to Cabin in the Woods,
Right.
Joss Whedon's film. It got made and sat on a shelf for a couple of years, but Chris Hemsworth rose to fame in those couple of years, and it got a whole new life after that.
Well, I think wasn't it The Crow had been made, and it was not going to come out. Like basically everybody involved just said, "Nah, this isn't going to work," and they put it away. And it was what's his name? Winston
Brandon Lee?
Zedmore
Oh.
that got it funding finally. Ernie
No
Ernie
way.
Hudson. Yeah, so I think Ernie Hudson went around, especially after Brandon Lee's death, and was a big advocate saying, you've got to put this movie out. And if you remember, it wasn't even completed. There was these different scenes where you could tell that it was like Brandon Lee's put into the scene, or whatever after the fact, because I think they basically stopped production. It was close to being done. It was like 95%
Wow.
done, and then he died. And it could have been a respect thing where they're like, well, I don't think we should put this out. He died during the making of this. So, but then Ernie's like, no, how more do you honor this kid by putting the movie out that he died making? I mean, and it's a great movie, and I'm glad he did it, but
Amen.
sad, but yeah, somebody had to be leading the front on the fight to get that put out. And then finally in trivia, in 2010, the city of San Dimas, California, San Dimas High School football rules, celebrated 50 years of incorporation. The celebration slogan was San Dimas 1960 to 2010, an excellent adventure.
That's awesome.
That is rad.
Way to embrace it.
Yeah, that's like that's what pisses me off about Philadelphia taking the Rocky statue down. Like they moved it or something. But
moved it, yeah.
Famously it was up on the steps there at the top, but they moved it to some other location. I'm like, that's sacrilege.
It's actually, it's still in the same area. It's just down the steps, lower to the ground. I don't know why they would have moved it. It doesn't make any sense to me.
That's silly. I want to run up those steps and I want to throw my hands up just like Rocky.
I did it. It was fun. Yeah, and then I realized there's a lot of steps there, and even though I was in shape, it still hurt a little.
Yeah, I never would have made it to the top. I'd be like, yeah, is there like a Uber or a rickshaw take me to the top or something, and then I'll just stand up.
It was a weekday when we went, and that place was packed because of Rocky. Everybody was up there, and the statue, there was a line of like 60 people long, so you go up and take your photo. And of course, we waited because you don't pass that opportunity up.
All right, so on next podcast, the movie Retakes is going to talk about Top Gun, because as you know, Top Gun Maverick, the sequel to the original Top Gun, will be coming out in this summer, and so we've got to go watch it. I've got the Need for Speed. What about you?
I was trying to think of something to say, and all I could think of was excellent.
Yeah, well, okay. All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody. This is Matt Sully and my big brother, Chris Sully. I was waiting for him to do his own. And we are the Brothers Sully, and this has been Movie Retakes. Thanks a lot for listening.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. They do get better.